I forget how old I was, man, but that was a trip.
Oh yeah.
The old stuff we used to do to entertain ourselves.
Yeah. The Twitter for the truckers.
Mute that.
Hi, YouTube guys.
Good morning, YouTube. Here is that on Twitter. And record. Hello there, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on HawkFanatic.com. I am Rob Howe, joined by Scott Docterman from The Athletic. We're going to make this we're going to try to make this tight and get to everything we need to get to. We got to get Scott on his plane to Columbus after he got off his plane from Chicago. He's on the move. I've been touring the state for high school volleyball and junior high volleyball this week, so we're going to settle in here for a little bit and talk some Hawkeyes. Got a quarterback commitment, little game in Columbus on Saturday. How you holding up, Scott?
I feel like when you plug your cell phone in for the night and all of a sudden you wake up, you unplug it, and you're at like 79%. That's kind of where I'm at right now when it comes to where I feel. Went to Big Ten Media Days. I didn't do much basketball. It was more talk to Tony Petiti and some other things. Heading to Columbus, and then next week I'll be heading to Nashville for the soiree with the summit between the Big Ten and the SEC. So
It's going to be awesome having you there, and we'll be able to get, having you on the ground, getting feedback from that, because obviously those are the powers in the sport that we cover, and they control what the future is going to look like here, whether they come up with some type of plan for restructuring or whatever they decide to do, and talk over it will be interesting, no doubt. And yes, Scott was in Chicago. Did not do much with the Iowa basketball, but we have Iowa basketball media days next week. And then we have a season that lasts all the way to March and April. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about basketball, Iowa and otherwise. But this is going to be football centric. It should be at this time of year. Hugest game of the year for Iowa, going into number 3 Ohio State, 2:30 Saturday CBS, 2:30 Central, that is, on CBS. And last I looked, and Scott will have the numbers later when we do our picks. I saw 19 and a half, 3 touchdowns basically, underdog. So obviously would be a monumental upset for Iowa. Scott, let's knock out, not to downplay this, but let's knock out the commitment from last night. Quarterback in the 2026 class, Cash Herrera from La Jolla, California, 6'3", 190. Chose Iowa ahead of reported offers from Minnesota, UCLA, Virginia Tech, Washington State, and just about all of the Ivy League schools. So smart kid. Prep Red Zone, California. That's the outfit I work for, Prep Red Zone. Number 70 prospect overall in the state of California for 2026. There's a lot of good players in California. He's the 12th ranked quarterback in that state. Also, a lot of good quarterbacks come out of California. Nice player, like his film. He is the second commitment in Iowa's 2026 class, joining Waterloo West offensive lineman Carson Nielsen. So excellent start. You get a tackle and a quarterback to start your 2026 class. Not bad for Iowa, Scott.
no, that's exactly what you would do if you're an NFL team. It's like, how are you building your NFL team? You want to get a quarterback and a left tackle, and next, you want to get a pass rusher and a shutdown corner, and you're on your way. Maybe a wide receiver while you're at it, and that one would probably be a little more difficult. But overall, I know this is a guy that they've targeted, that they wanted, that came to Iowa and visited, has a really good list of offers. It's still early, so you gotta, there's not, you can't just say, oh yeah, he's in the bag. It's more like, yeah, he's in the bag until when you give him the bag. But the 2026 quarterback, and I think what's important is this is the first one for Tim Lester. This is the one he wanted, he targeted, he went after, and he got, and that's really important. And as we know, Iowa has struggled a lot with quarterback recruiting for a long time now.
And development.
And development's been right there with that. Stanley was probably the last quality, guy who got drafted by the NFL. Let's put him in that
Mhm.
category. He was the last quarterback to be in that category. And he committed what in 13, 14? He came in
Yeah.
16. So it was like 14, I think. So we're talking 10 years since they really had a quality commitment. And then they brought in, I mean, Spencer was good, but he's not an NFL guy. I mean, let's just leave it where it is. And the rest of them, pretty damn disappointing. I mean, when you got guys who have great offers, then you wonder how did they get great offers if like Deuce Hogan can't start at New Mexico State, and
Yeah.
uh, Alex Padilla, had a Georgia offer just like Deuce did, and um, yeah,
So evaluation
yeah,
development.
yeah. So. But what have you seen from him? I haven't paid. I know his name. I know a little bit about
Yeah.
him. That's it.
Good name. Could be confusing with the defensive position at Iowa.
Yeah,
We're
I'm not
talking.
wearing this today because of that.
He's not celebrating.
I'm celebrating Cash Herrera.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is like I said, he's 6'3", 190. Obviously, has plenty of time to add, bulk or mass to his frame. But the 6'3", looks like he can move. Looks like he fits Tim Lester's system. I think the thing that I like most about this, Scott, is he's a kid that came here in June without a scholarship offer, worked out in front of the coaches, went through a whole camp. They were like, yes, offer. Those to me are those are the best evaluations. You were hands-on with them in your camp. They convinced you that this is a guy that you want to be your quarterback, because it's so much different than other positions. You get one guy most of the time, especially now with the transfer portal. They got Sullivan in 25 and now him in 26. That's good. You got your quarterbacks locked up for the next two classes. And for him too, you wonder about a kid committing before, living from La Jolla, California, coming to Iowa City, Iowa, and he felt great when he was here too. So you had that summer where Iowa got to know him and saw that he could be the guy they wanted, and then he saw Iowa as a place that he wanted, all at the same time. And then whatever it is, 3 months later, I'm bad at math.
Yeah.
4 months later, whatever it is, pretty close after that,
Yeah.
he decides that's where he wants to go. That to me is a good process.
Absolutely. And I agree with the coming here. It shows that he has a desire to be here. He didn't just get an offer and then, we'll make time and then take an unofficial visit when you have time. No, he showed he wanted to come to camp here and to work out here and show off what he's got. And that enables Tim Lester, as you said, have hands-on, work with him, see what he's got. Then they pulled the offer, or I shouldn't say pull the offer. They gave him the offer, and then after that, then they're working through a couple of things, and voila, he decides to pick Iowa. That's a really healthy process, and if they can build on that process, ensure that even if he has quality junior and senior years in California, that they can maintain that, because your biggest fear now is, okay, what happens if he blows up and then USC or somebody like that comes calling, Oregon, then I want to stay on the West Coast. It's easy to overlook UCLA right now, because if they win a game this year, I'll be surprised in the Big Ten. But if USC, for instance, comes calling, that's going to be tough. But then again, if USC comes calling for anybody, that's going to be tough at that position. So I think you just say, all right, well, we're happy with what we got. We'll foster this relationship, work on it as much as we can. And, in the next bye week or whatever, maybe Lester goes out there and watches a game or does whatever he can just to continue to build that, So overall, good stuff for Iowa.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too now, Scott. This is, I think, Iowa's first real, the conference just expanded, but with the footprint now going out to the West, maybe Iowa can get, you got to recruit everywhere, right? So maybe you can work a little bit in California on the West Coast now that it's Big Ten country, so to speak, so maybe that works out well for them in that regard too.
Of course, Southern California is a fertile market. You do have it's the difference in recruiting styles is USC is while it dominates Southern California, it also has more of a national footprint to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Ohio State. Ohio State gets what it wants in Ohio, but it also looks at itself and says, well, we got a nice 4-star here in Dayton, or we could go to Atlanta and get a 5-star. Well, or South Florida. USC's that way. UCLA is more local, but UCLA is struggling. And Oregon has done a good job, kind of like Iowa with Chicago. Yeah. I think they've done that way, and they've built their program there. And the plus now for an Iowa is if you go there, that like before Arizona State or Arizona or the other Pac-12 schools. Now Utah is very heavy in Southern California, especially.
I'll be interested to see how that holds up now that they're in the Big 12, though.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I was saying. That now they're not playing in Southern California every other year or even every year. So can Iowa? We know Nebraska will probably be there, but can Iowa get there and say to a running back or a wide receiver or a lineman or something like that? Look, we're going to be out here probably every other year. So if you're in a 4-year career, you might be out here twice. That's closer than what you get if you go to Utah, because the closest place you'll go there is Phoenix, maybe the Holiday Bowl, something like that. So I don't know. It's a good possibility. And if you have a quarterback and you get him early, he has friends, and usually they have influence. And not saying he's Jake Christensen or anything, but maybe he can get a friend or two to come with.
Yeah, wide receiver.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody plays 7-on-7 with him.
Yes. Related to that, I've kind of been. I'm not covering recruiting as closely as I used to for Iowa. Different responsibilities now, but I took, in talking with Liddell Betts a few times. Off season. Then when we had him on the Zoom a few weeks ago, his approach to recruiting running backs is there are a lot of running backs out there, and I'll find the one. And he's shown that he's good. We talked about the quarterback identifying, evaluate, develop. He's shown that he can do that. I've noticed him start to offer some running backs that now have 2, 3, 4 games under their belts this fall. So Iowa kind of missed on some running backs earlier in this cycle.
Yeah.
He's still kind of like that old school Iowa. I can find a guy in his senior year and offer him a scholarship, and he's a guy I can bring him here and he'll work. And I kind of like that. I like that Liddell is showing that ability to identify and not panic and still end up. You look at all the guys that they're bringing in, they're all guys that are capable of helping them.
No question. Liddell, when you look now at his resume for bringing in recruits at that position, it's really strong. Yeah. Just look at the number 2 leading rusher in the country, Caleb Johnson, who's his first offer. And he was able to, not only when he said, "No, I'm going to go to Cal," okay, well, keep us in mind if you want to change your mind. And then he did. And he was able to bring him in. And even if he struggled at times, keep him in the fold, and look at him now. But then Jazz Patterson has stepped in and been a really good asset. And Kamari Moulton. I wondered at first, I'm like, okay, they got him away from Florida Atlantic. Is this just a guy, just a body, and we've seen that before with running backs as much as anybody that, they're from Florida. They didn't play for a year. Then all of a sudden they transfer, want to be closer to home or whatever. And no, it seems like, he's going to be a pretty good player for him too. This year they went closer to home. Brevin Dahl is a guy, from the state of Iowa you got to get. And then Xavier Williams, who's from Indiana, is that big physical guy that they like. But, Liddell is, he was asked about that earlier this year in one of our Zoom calls about recruiting running backs. And he's like, I don't feel like I've missed on anybody. I don't know that I feel a lot of pressure right now to go get somebody either. Now, seeing what Caleb Johnson can do and knowing what awaits that is, maybe you might want to, and that's probably what he's doing. It's like, okay, now maybe I need to start looking for at least one running back for next year. But they've got a pretty good stable of running backs, I think, right now. So he's done a great job. And California, again, going all the way back, If you get Cash Herrera and you're out there and Tim Lester's say he's at a high school game, he's like, wow, that running back's really good. He'd fit here. And then Liddell checks in, that might be your one guy.
He found an interesting one this week that he offered, Nathan McDaniel out of Tampa, Wiregrass Ranch High School. He lists himself as a running back slot, 5'11", 195. I watched this film after Iowa offered. Very interesting. And Liddell's right. There are a lot of guys out there that get overlooked. And Florida's a good place to look for guys that are overlooked because there's so many good backs. And we've seen that, just with Kamari and Jazz.
Yeah.
Two guys that, kind of were whatever down there. For the most, well, Jazz was pretty highly recruited, at least early on.
Yeah.
I feel good about him being able to grab at least one in this class. And like you said, running back they've been fortunate to keep everything, not have attrition. But I think eventually at some point you get so many guys in the room that guys don't see a path to the field. And they're like, I got to go somewhere where I can play if that's what they want.
Well, when you looked into this year, I was really surprised nobody left.
Yeah,
I thought Jazz would have probably left, honestly, or Caleb, because LaShawn Williams had taken the role last year as the primary running back. And then you go into this year and he's been dinged up. So this is his last year of eligibility. And then Caleb, if he continues on somewhat of the same trajectory, he's not going to be here next year. He'll be lucky to keep him for the bowl game, but after that, then you've got, so you still have Jazz and still have Kamari, you have Brevin Dahl, Xavier, Williams, but you want to have somebody else in there because they've shown it's at that position you've built some equity, but they're willing to play somebody right away. And they have for years. And running back is that position where your athletic ability gets you on the field much faster than, say, at a line position where you've got to learn your technique, or otherwise, I don't care how athletic you are, you're going to get smoked.
Yeah, no doubt. And we see that at running back too. I think that was kind of what held Caleb back was if you want the job, which he has now, he had to show that he was head and shoulder and natural ability. He is, and no disrespect to the other guys in the room, he's a freak athletically and the most talented, gifted running back. And now that he's matched that or married that to how Liddell and the Iowa coaches want him to play and practice, he's found his way to the top. So to your point, Kamari was the starter to start this season, right?
Yeah.
And that was probably a message to Caleb. We're not seeing enough yet. So it's a healthy room. And after hearing Liddell talk about not being worried about recruiting running backs and then seeing him offer a guy he identified a few weeks into this season, kind of caught my eye, and I figured I'd bring it up.
Yeah. And, one other fact about that is Jazz was suspended for a game and Caleb was suspended for a half. And LaShawn was a little bit dinged up. And so it had to be Kamari Moulton right away. And he did okay in that first game. I mean, it wasn't so much him, but then what we saw when Caleb got in there, and I think that was a wake up call for Caleb because he'd always had the athletic gifts. We looked at him from day one and went, wow, even in those practice pictures from Brian Ray as a freshman, you're like, okay, you look the part, kid, now go out there and do it. And he did it a couple of times, but it was always like, you just want to see that go from 80% of a great running back to 100%. And he certainly has done that now. And some of that's Tim Lester's scheme, putting him in a better position to make those plays. And then it's also him taking that step forward in different areas. And you've got to like what you see with him. Now, coming up this week, he's going to face his most challenging team, opponent, defense. And there's a lot there that he's going to have to prepare for. And I think Iowa fans hopefully will be prepared that it's not going to come easy. If it does, it's either A, Ohio State's defense is not as good as we thought, or B, maybe he is that special.
Yeah, maybe Iowa's offensive line
Yeah.
I mean, certainly their biggest challenge. Probably, you know what? Before we dive in, let me do the break now, Scott, and so then we push that out of the way, and then we can dig into the Ohio State game and do our picks here. So.
Okay.
All right, folks, support for the podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. We'll hear from a few more of our sponsors now. Scott and I will be back on the other side to break down the Iowa-Ohio State game. Hang tight. And we are back on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast to let you know that the technician is here to fix my hot water heater. No, that's not why we're back, but it's very important. Cold shower last night, Scott. Hadn't done one of those in a long time, and hopefully don't do one again in a long time. I was like leaning forward to wash my hair so the water would
I know. And then you just walk in and you're like, oh, you grit your teeth and you jump around really quick. And then you're like, back up. And then here we go. Yeah, done that before.
Mind over matter. And it matters.
Yeah.
Switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, State Farm agent Chad Birch right here in Iowa City can switch you over so you can start saving today. Chad and his team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. With Chad Birch, it's easy to switch and save. Just give him a call when you want the real deal. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Hardcore Hawk fans gotta have a Kinnick Scoreboard Entertainment Center. Contact Fanatics Furniture at 319-750-0005 or KNICK3615 at gmail.com. Scoreboard Entertainment Centers. Be hardcore. 319-750-0005 or KNICK 3615 at gmail.com. And last but certainly not least, we do not have a Black Angel read or recording yet, so we will just tell you to get to Black Angel. Scott Docterman endorsed Black Angel, downtown Iowa City, Perez family, El Banditos, Perez Tacos, formerly, now Black Angel. Go check it out.
Yep, it's a great spot on Dubuque Street, and what better time than to visit the Black Angel there and in the cemetery, and then in October.
Yep, ooh, spooky coming up.
Yep.
All right, Scott, little game in Columbus at the Shoe this weekend. You talked about Ohio State's defense. Obviously, they invested a lot in that. They invested a lot in offense. They invested a lot, period. The number we've heard is 20 million. Tough to document those things these days, but suffice it to say that Ohio State is in a good place with its NIL. Not breaking news, and used it to its advantage. So far, so good. But this is their toughest test too, Scott. And we'll see. You know, Will Howard has a lot of experience, but he hasn't played Iowa's defense before. Chip Kelly, super offensive mind. But what will he do against Iowa's defense? Is he going to get greedy and try to attack it, or is he going to take what's given to him? Be interesting to see, because I think strategy here, right, it's always important. But for this game, if you go back to 2013 and Iowa had a plan and it almost worked. I don't know if you have to be super extreme here, Scott, if you're Iowa, but you have to you have to not just be predictable, though. You have to come up with some things. And I think they're in position, as we've talked about, how this offense has evolved through 4 games to maybe pull some stuff out this week that works.
Yeah, I think so. This is where when you first look at the words Ohio State and it's in Columbus, that you automatically, as an old Big Ten team, you go, oh man, they're number 3. They're Ohio State. Iowa hasn't won there in 33 years. It's just, forget it, because why? Well, because they win all the time there. They other than Michigan, the last team that they lost to in the Big Ten was Purdue in 18. Before that, it was Iowa in 17 in Iowa City, and both of those were on the road. So I think Michigan State in 15 might have been the last time they lost at home against a non-Michigan team. That was by a last-second field goal. So they don't lose there to Big Ten teams, and Iowa and everybody else knows that. So you go into there, but throw away the intimidation factor. You don't think Ohio State, Columbus. You think quarterback Will Howard, Kansas State.
Mm-hmm.
You think left tackle Josh Simmons, transferred from San Diego State. You think this is a team with players on it. You think true freshman wide receiver, not number 1 recruit in the country in Jeremiah Smith, not a 5-star guy. You think you've got Jamari Harris, 6th-year guy, cornerback,
yep,
who's been through the wars. I mean, who's backed up guys like Riley Moss and Cooper DeJean and players in the NFL, and played against some great players too, including Marvin Harrison a few years ago. So you look at it, you try to remove the intimidation factor and play it for what it is, which is Ohio State's 4-0. They're the most talented team in the Big Ten, maybe the most talented team in the country. My pick to win the national title. Yet, the player for player, how can you compete with that? And I think Iowa's defense is built to compete if it plays the way it's supposed to play, which is they've got 2 NFL caliber running backs, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. They are phenomenal running backs. But you stop the run. They average 62 yards a game against you. You've got your defense is built to stop the big passing play, too deep, too high safety look, zone coverage. How are they going to attack it? Can they attack it? Can they attack it consistently? And if you don't allow the big plays, which you traditionally don't, but you have so far this year, but if you don't, are they going to be patient enough to attack you repeatedly? Are they going to be patient enough? Will Chip Kelly be patient enough to say, you know what? We're just going to keep hammering them. And sometime a run's going to break. Or it's 2nd and 9 and it's 3rd and 8. And it's like, And will Will Howard be able to attack a defense that's that structurally sound and with that good of talent over and over and over and over again? That's their test. And Ohio State has a test there. Talent-wise, no question. They are better than Iowa there. But Iowa has enough dudes on defense to make it hard on them. And it goes without saying, Rob, you can't do what you did the last time. 6 turnovers, as an Australian punter deciding to take off on his own. Torrey, I'm sure, cringes when he thinks about it to this day. I mean, Spencer threw an interception on the first play of the game. He threw a pick 6 right before halftime. They fumbled the first snap of the second half away. They gave the ball away, I think, 6 times in their own 40. No matter what your defense is, that's a recipe for disaster. So I do think if this defense frustrates and disrupts the passing game and does what it needs to in the running game, that they can be competitive in this matchup.
Their top 3 receivers have combined for 54 catches for 945 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Iowa as a team, 65 catches for 590 yards and 4 touchdowns. Iowa's been a little bit more run heavy, as we know.
Yeah.
But the passing game is very dynamic and dangerous. And as Scott said, with Judkins and Henderson in the backfield, and at least 4 projected offensive linemen that are going to play in the NFL, and same on the defensive line. I mean, they're really good in the trenches too. And I think if there's one thing that concerns me, Iowa wins in the trenches. This is going to be a really big challenge for them, for both Iowa's defensive line and Iowa's offensive line.
For sure. This this is the best line of scrimmage team you're going to face. And that's where, when you peel back all the skill position players, because immediately that's what we look at.
Right.
When you peel it back, it's a line of scrimmage game. Who can win the line of scrimmage? If Iowa can generate largely a stalemate, it'll be competitive. If it doesn't, it's going to get blown out, or it's going to lose decisively. And I think that's really key. I mean, as you mentioned with Ohio State, they brought in, the left tackle from San Diego State, the center from Alabama. They brought in guys to complement other really good players up front. And as a unit, they're as good as you get. And on defense, they are terrific, highly sought after. But they haven't done as much getting after the quarterback as their fans expect.
I noticed that.
JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, they haven't got after the quarterback as much. And Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton are two really good defensive tackles. They go 7, 8, 9 deep there. But teams built, they decide, hey, we're not going to get into 5 and 7 step drop and let them come and attack our guy. We're going to get in a 3-step drop and get rid of the ball and not allow it to disrupt us. And I think that's kind of what's happened against them. But and the other parts are, their competition has not been strong, which is unusual for Ohio State. This is a 1-year aberration in the non-conference, because they had a home set up with Washington, and Washington joins the Big Ten, and so they end up with Akron and Marshall, and their first game was at Michigan State, which has got some talent, but is still a year or two away from really being what Michigan State was under Mark D'Antonio, for instance. So I think this is by far their biggest test. And Iowa's had 2 pretty good tests. And Iowa State, obviously, I think Minnesota provided that. I think Minnesota's better than Michigan State. And they had to go there, rivalry game, team that likes to play physical football. So, really good running back, great wide receiver. So I think that this is you're like Iowa always is. It's a tested team. It's a veteran team. It's a tough team. And if you can't match that physicality and toughness, it's not going to be an easy day for you either.
Yeah, no doubt. And I got the sense Tuesday in talking to the student athletes that and not surprisingly, they have a good approach. They know it's a tall task. They know it's a huge task to try to win this game. But I think they respect Ohio State, but they also see this as a huge opportunity. And it is, which kind of leads me to the next point that I wanted to get to, Scott, which is the stakes of this game. What's at stake? Ohio State could absorb a loss and still make the playoffs here, but they still have big games left down the road as well. So they don't want to lose this game. For Iowa, we've talked about it weekly, and I think it's good to talk about it weekly now that we have the expanded playoff. Where does Iowa sit? What can happen Saturday? They could win, and obviously that, you beat Ohio State, you put that on your resume. Even if you lose another game, you're sitting pretty with the 2 lost teams with a win over Ohio State. You lose a close game? No, that's something that will be discussed if you are a 2-loss team with the other 2. However, look what they did at Ohio State. They hung. It was a 4-quarter game. They lost at the end. Iowa State won the Big 12. They had to beat Iowa on a late field goal. Those are the type of things that might differentiate team by team when we get down to the selection process. You get blown out this week, Scott, that's going to put you on the outside looking in.
Yeah, then you got to put yourself in that ugly position, because if they're 3-2 and in a way where, I won't say 54-10, I think that's probably unlikely, but let's say it's 34-10, and you look like you were the JV against the varsity. If that happens here, then I think, when you start to talk about playoff discussion, even if you win out, but you don't get in the Big Ten championship game, you're probably 15th. You're probably 13th. You're just not going to get there, because there's going to be other teams with an impressive win, with, even though you had a really good year and a bounce back, and maybe you put yourself in that conversation, but it's going to be like, yeah, but when you played against the teams that were in the playoff, you didn't play well. And I think that's why it is important. Now, if they were to go out and say lose 23-13, but Ohio State kicks a late field goal and makes it 10, or maybe they score a late touchdown that puts it away. There's no moral victories, but you'd say, you know what? They competed. They looked the part, and how many other teams in this country will play Ohio State at Ohio State and lose by more than 10 points? All of them? Most of them will, including those in the playoffs. So then you put yourself in that position again, like you said, where even if you lose a tiebreaker, you're 8-1 in the Big Ten at the end of the year, but you lose the tiebreaker to Penn State or Oregon or somebody like that. Mm-hmm. But then Iowa's still in that conversation. It's like, hey, you know what? They went to Columbus, they lost by 10. That's pretty impressive, and you're probably not going to host a game. You might have to play on the road, but still it puts you in that conversation. And that's what you want. But of course, if they win, this changes the entire season.
Yep.
Because then you become the hunted and everybody's going to be targeting you. And then they'll have to guard against that a little bit next week when they play Washington, because Washington's obviously going to look at them. Wow, this team beat Ohio State. We got to be much more prepared, and the rivals are going to be like sharpening their knives. How comes Northwestern and Wisconsin and Nebraska and all that. But 8-1 still can get you in position to go to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And if you get there, you have a puncher's chance. And if this path, and you look at that path, like 23-13, you lose. Somehow you pull out the tiebreaker. You play Ohio State again in Indianapolis, and your passing game looks good, better than it is now. Your running game is still at a high level. Your defense is at a high level. Maybe it happens. I think what we're all saying here, or what I'm saying is, you want to see a competitive game. You want to see them fight and battle. I mean, do I see a path to victory? Yeah. Unlike 2 years ago, I did not, because I just didn't think that I could see a path if they control the football, don't turn it over, do all the right things that Iowa does, and then defensively forces them to play ground acquisition football. Then you've got a chance in the fourth quarter, and then you go, hey, there's a pretty good field goal kicker here. You've got a team. You've got one team that's frustrated. The 100,000 that are there in the Death Star are starting to, boo or get agitated, and you're taking the air out of that stadium. You got a chance, but to get there, you've got to play, I won't say flawless, but damn near flawless football.
Yeah, and Ohio State probably needs to be a little bit off, and that's what you get in these situations. You need the favored team to maybe come down back to you a little bit, and then you have to raise your level up to where they are. Iowa's capable. It's predicting the win for Iowa this week, I think, is not real. It's not looking at it objectively. If you're throwing that out there, you're not looking at what's on paper. But, it's a tired cliche, but games aren't played on paper. And Iowa has pulled upsets before. Most of them come at Kinnick Stadium. But I think this team is confident. I think they believe in themselves. I think the offense believes it's making the strides it needs to make. Has it made enough strides to be able to help it win a game like this? I don't know. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. We won't know until Saturday, because any way you slice it, Scott, the offense is going to have to make some plays on Saturday. Ohio State is going to score. They're not going to put up 50, but they're going to put up enough points where you're going to have to score. You can't rely on your defense and field goals. You're going to have to get a couple touchdowns, probably, at least. So I think it's going to take some aggression. I think it's going to take, you want to play your game while it's close. You don't want to get yourself into a track meet with this team by any means. But you also don't want to be too passive offensively.
Mm-hmm. It's a careful mix. Yeah, it's a careful balance.
Yeah.
Because you want to be smart, but you want to take shots when they're there, because you have to. You have to have a leap of faith and
trust your players.
Yeah. I mean, at least once this game, it's 3rd and 1 near midfield, you might have to play action pass, instead of try to run and grind it up, because they're going to be looking
Three
for
handoffs to the fullback, you mean? Like
yeah.
in Madison?
Oh man, that was dreadful, wasn't it?
Sorry.
Or the debacles against Purdue that year too. I mean, good Lord. But,
yeah, that's the type of stuff though that you can't do that stuff.
No, and I think they have a different play caller now that wouldn't do it quite that way. Although, I hope he learned from Iowa State. I think he has. I think he was smart enough there. But yeah, again, if it's 3rd and 1 at your own 49, and they're going 4-3, and Caleb Downs is coming downhill to stop Caleb Johnson, that you play action pass, and then you might get that shot.
Yep.
But it's going to take that shot to do it, because if you decide, well, let's just get the first down here and let them think about it, well, then on 1st and 10 from the 50 or their 49, then they're going to be back to their base coverage. They're going to be looking at all the keys, and it's not going to be there. So that's where you're going to have to take that leap of faith. And maybe I'll be in the press box going, oh man, you should have just ran for the first down.
Yeah.
Sometimes against these teams, you just have to take that shot and be smart. And you're going to have to stick to the running game too.
Exactly. Yep.
You can't get frustrated and think, well, it's not working, they're stopping us. You just have to be there with it and be physical. And there's going to be some adversity. There's going to be some challenges. There may be a turnover. There may be a penalty that keeps a drive alive for Ohio State. But this is a mature group of football players. They've been through a lot of things together for a lot of years, and they're tough mentally, and they're tough physically. And again, you get this game into the 4th quarter, which is what Iowa obviously wants to do, then they're going to have a lot of confidence in themselves, and Cade has beaten Ohio State, and maybe that charge kind of gets them going. And, the most recent 3 games they've had there, they rarely play there anymore. 09 and 13, those two, they scored 24 points, and they were right there. One went to overtime and they lost. The other one, it was 24-24 in the 4th quarter. And it was just a difference in talent that day. And Iowa's talent now is better than what it was in 13, especially on defensive line, that area, much better now than what it was then. So if you figure we need to score 24 points, I think that's a number that Iowa can win with. But getting to 24 will not be easy.
Yeah, as Scott alluded to before, you're looking at 2 of the best rush defenses in the country. Well, Ohio State 63 yards, Iowa 64.
61 and 62. Yeah.
61 and 62. Well, 1.9 yards per carry and 2 yards per. So it's going to be tough sledding in. To Scott's point, I think both teams will stay committed to the run because they know it's going to be hard. And you have to in a game like this. You have to try to push through and keep a balanced offense. But that's part of the challenge, too. When do you go for it? As Scott said, when do you take those shots?
Yeah. Well, let's flip it over to the other side, Ohio State's point of view, which they haven't been challenged like this. And their running game is fantastic as well. You can't allow, if you're Ryan Day, yes, you have all these players there, but you can't throw 3 passes and get 3 incompletions or a 6-yard out and 2 incompletions and then give the ball to Iowa and maybe they run the ball on you.
Yeah.
And they get a 7-minute drive, even if it's a field goal, and then you go out and do the same damn thing and Iowa does it again. You're putting your defense at a disadvantage. It's the complementary football. It works for every school in different ways. Some schools like Purdue under Jeff Brom was like, we don't want to go 3 yards in a cloud of dust on defense. We will blitz the hell out of you on 3rd down, try to force a turnover, try to get a sack and a punt, but we're not going to worry about like Iowa, which is bend but don't break, and so Ohio State has to protect its defense a little bit too, unless the defense can force Iowa to go 3 and out, several times in a row.
2:30 Saturday, 2:30 Central Time Saturday in Columbus at the Shoe CBS. For those that won't be there, among the 100,000 people and Scott.
Yeah.
So it'll be a good show. We'll give our picks on that game when we do our picks coming up. And anything else on this game, Scott? I think we've kind of exhausted kind of what the setup here. Pull for Caleb. I think he talked about it on Tuesday. He's in the Heisman discussion. He should be in the Heisman discussion. How strong of a candidate is he? It's a quarterback award. He's going to have to really, really turn it on here. And this would be the game, right? The Heisman game for him. When you look at Iowa's schedule, if he can put up a big game on Saturday, that's great for his candidacy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you look at these factors outside of the game for Iowa, you've got Caleb Johnson, which number one is, Heisman talk. If he goes out and has 150 yards and 2 touchdowns and Iowa wins, then immediately he becomes, Valti and Ashton Jeanty, they become
good.
Yeah, he's really good, but he's also at Boise State too.
Yeah.
And if you go do this at Ohio State,
yeah,
okay, you are at worst, you're in a heavy discussion for the Doak Walker Award. You're in a heavy discussion for first team All-American as a running back. I mean, that's a pretty good thing. Plus, there's a shit ton of scouts who are going to be there who are going to say, okay, we need this guy. And I'm not saying it's going to vault him to be a first round guy, but maybe it'll vault him to be a heavy consideration, for top 50 in the NFL draft. And so that's really important for him. Same thing with the offensive linemen. How do they compete against, because they're NFL guys. And I know some people may say, oh, they're just there to watch Igbuka or Caleb Downs in another year or Denzel Burke or something like that. No, they also want to see what Mason Richmond does, because you know what scouts do? They don't just draft the first round and then call it a good, they want to also see who's going to be a good 4th or 5th rounder for us. Who's a guy that we can bring in and start and play for us for 6 or 7 years on the offensive line. And maybe it's Mason Richmond, maybe it's Jennings Dunker, maybe it's somebody, Bo Stevens. That's what they're also looking at. And finally, a couple of other big angles to that. Luke Lachey. I think
the story he told about his sister the other day,
yeah,
which was funny.
I know. Of all, we've covered so many athletes over the years, Rob, who you really enjoy talking to, and I don't know that any of them have been actually nicer than him, though.
He's really genuine too. You get that feeling around him, that warm feeling of him just being a good guy.
Yeah, just a really nice person. And I would say him and Megan Gustafson are probably the two that really come to mind.
That's a good comparison.
Just you feel like, oh man, these are just really nice people. Like you wish they were there, your neighbors or something, and then you look at, so going home, his dad was an All-American there. He's radio voice of the Buckeyes. He was he's very much in the Hall of Very Good for the NFL, 3-time All-Pro. And so going home, I know BTN did a Journey episode with him. I think that's really, fun. And the other thing is Kirk Ferentz is sitting on win number 199 at Iowa. 200 puts him past Amos Alonzo Stagg for second all time. The only traditional Big Ten venue he hasn't won at is the Horseshoe. And, he was there in 87 when they won on Marv Cook's miraculous score there. And he hasn't won any other since. And, that, and the next time that they'll probably play in the Horseshoe at the earliest will be 2029. And I would probably bet that Kirk may not be there then, but you never know.
He could be.
Yeah,
I won't rule it out.
I won't rule it out, but that is 5 years down the road. So that might be
hopefully we're here in 5 years.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, not even
we're all day to day, Scott.
Yeah, not even just sports, life, But
yes. We're all day to day.
Yeah, we're all day to day. That's 2 elections down the road, so you never know.
Oh, we're not going there. We're definitely not going there. Yeah. Let's do picks. Okay. I know we got to get you on this plane, and we've talked enough today.
Yeah. Well, last week I had a really nice week, and you had a pretty good week. I went 6-2. You went 4-4.
I'll take it.
We split on I picked Minnesota and took the 9, And for a while, you looked like you had the part when it was 24-3 and then going in the fourth quarter. But then Minnesota came back and then got kind of screwed in the end. And I took Michigan, or you took Michigan State. I took Ohio State minus 24 and ended up 38-7. So, and we both lost.
And that game, they put it on in the second half too and got that cover.
Yeah. Yeah. So it shows you how challenging this is.
Mm-hmm.
Like we both lost Oregon. And it was 34-13 and it was minus 24.5.
Yeah.
Oregon threw a pick six at the end of the first half. And then the second half just took the air out of the ball. And then
it's uncanny how good the guys and gals that make the lines are.
Yeah.
How good they are at it.
It is unreal. So overall I'm 39-27. You're 33. So
500.
Yeah. So that's, getting into October.
I'm going to get over this week, over 500 I'm going to push it over.
All right. Well, let's start with tonight's game, which I'll watch as soon as I get to Columbus. And that's Michigan State at Oregon. Oregon minus 23.5. I am going to go with Michigan State. How about you? I think Oregon's going to win, but I think
it's interesting. You've got the coach going, the coach that was at Oregon State going to Oregon. This is kind of interesting dynamic. Yeah, that's a tough number. 23, you say?
23.5.
All right, I'm going to take the home team there.
All right, Oregon Quack Attack. All right, big noon kickoff. UCLA at Pennsylvania State University and minus 27.5 for the Nittany Lions. I am going to take the Nittany Lions. I think this could be in Uglyville.
That is an awful long way to go to get your ass kicked.
And play at noon Eastern when you're not, which is 9 a.m. your time.
Well, Washington will be facing that next week when they come here.
Yes, they will.
So we'll see how that works out for UCLA. UCLA's got more challenges than the time zones. Yeah, I'll take Penn State.
Okay. All right. Next up, we've got, speaking of shitstorms, Purdue, which fires its offensive coordinator and then elevates an analyst who's barely called plays to be its OC at Wisconsin, which lost Ches Malusi for the season. They lost their quarterback and their running back this year, but Wisconsin's won, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 straight or something like that against Purdue. It's at Camp Randall, minus 13.5. I'm going to take Wisconsin.
Yeah, me too. That seems low, which worries me.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to give more points. That's how I feel about Purdue, but Wisconsin's pretty ho-hum meh now too.
They are experiencing, in my eyes, what Iowa did about 10 years ago. In that 11, 12, 13, 14, just kind of bowl team, not good. Some good players, play hard, but the difference is that Iowa still has the same coach, and they've changed their coaches. But next up, Indiana, undefeated Indiana, minus 13 at Northwestern. I'm going IU because I think IU is really good.
Yeah, I'm going to ride that train until it hits the station because it's rolling right now.
Yeah. I know. Next week, or they get a week off, and then they'd play Nebraska. That would be.
Did they do a lot in the portal? How did they?
Indiana? Oh yeah.
Okay, I was wondering. I was like, man, they seem like they've upgraded the talent-wise a lot there.
That was really smart for what Kirk Cignetti did. Was first of all, he's a winner. He was at James Madison, but we always see a lot of guys who go from being good FCS or G5 coaches and then go to the next level and flop.
Yep.
In his case, he was smart with the portal. He brought like his whole entire team from James Madison, that were guys that were first and second teams, all Sun Belt. They were all older. And then he made one of the better smart pickups in Curtis Rourke, who was Ohio's quarterback. He was a little dinged up, so he didn't get a lot of traction in the portal. But he's been fantastic. And this team, they went out with veterans. They went with guys who could play right away and guys he knew. And of course, their schedule has paid off. But, still, they're winning games decisively.
It's Indiana, and they're winning. So that's progress.
The game that we didn't think would feature only one loss among them. Rutgers at Nebraska. Nebraska -7. Rutgers is undefeated. Nebraska is 4-1. I don't like the -7. I hate to feel like, oh, this is Pushville, but I'm going to go with Nebraska anyway.
Yeah, I think it could be a touchdown game. That's a good number. Yeah, I'll take the home team in that case. But yeah, that's one I would stay away from it with real money.
Yeah, same here. At night on BTN, you've got USC -9 at Minnesota. I like the Gophers on this one. I'm not saying yet that I would go outright, but give me 9 points of the Gophers, the way they play, physical running game. USC is obviously a good team. They beat Wisconsin, but I think Minnesota's better than Wisconsin. So I'm going to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, that seems like too many points in that game. Minnesota showed me something last week by, not rolling over for Michigan and making it a game. So I'm going to definitely take the 9 points, but USC is a tough team to figure out.
Yeah.
I just, they looked terrible on defense early and then figured it out. It's just, I don't know. They seem like a work in progress.
Yeah, I mean, they've beaten Michigan and LSU, and they've got it. Obviously, they're a really good team, I'm sorry, they didn't beat Michigan. They lost to Michigan, but it was really close. And then they beat Wisconsin, they beat LSU. They've got pieces, and on offense, they're a terrific team. But
super talented, like you said, especially on offense.
Yeah, but the Gophers they're battle tested.
Yeah,
they played North Carolina and lost because their kicker missed a field goal, and then they lost to Iowa, but they were leading at halftime. They lost to Michigan after a onside kick didn't go their way. What a play that was! Yeah. Big Ten changes the rules because of it. Now here's the one where the line has moved the most in the last few weeks. Michigan at Washington. Washington is a 1-point favorite. A couple weeks ago, Michigan was -9, and this is at Washington. Give me the Huskies.
I'll take the Wolverines.
Okay. Michigan. Finally, we go to this one where the line has it opened at 24 at Iowa to Ohio State. Now it's 18, according to the consensus on Vegas Insiders. So I think Iowa people are going, well, I don't know about this. With that line, Rob, 18. Give me Iowa and 18. I think they lose. I would pick like 23-13. But even if it's 30-13, I still win that. So, and if it's 31-13, it's a push. So I'm going with Iowa with the 18, but I think that Ohio State wins the game.
I'm kind of with you right on that 10 number. I've got 27-17.
Okay.
So I also will take the points in this game. I think we see a spirited effort from Iowa and a focused one that, with not a lot of penalties, turnovers, things like that. Give them a chance, give themselves a chance in the second half. I just can't get there yet, with what, having looked over Ohio State's roster even closer this week and what they have as we talked about in the trenches, which is Iowa's strength. It's strength against strength. And if it was in Iowa, that one I could feel a little bit better about. This one I think is just going to be a little bit too tall of a task. But like we said, if they can hang in this game, have a good showing, you move on and keep yourself in the CFP race. You got Washington next week, a manageable schedule moving forward. Just play well this week, improve, take step forward. You may not get a win, but if you've shown progress again and moving in the right direction, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, exactly. This is not the kind of game that fans at the end of it should go, oh, I'm done with this team. I can't believe it. If you start thinking that way, you know what? Just go pick a different team. I mean, go to the other side. Go to Ohio State, where it's national championship or bust. You want to talk about pressure? That's that team, because if that team doesn't win the national championship, then everybody's Ryan Day should be fired, or if they lose to Michigan, or if they lose the Big Ten championship game, even if they get to the playoff, it's, he's lost to Michigan the last 3 years. The last Big Ten team before that they lost to was Purdue. Yeah, still, and that was an 18. It doesn't matter. They have that. It's that and that. I mean, in tiers, but Iowa has been able to punch over its weight class multiple times. It would not shock me if Iowa pulls out a win. It would surprise me,
yes,
but it would not shock me. I just can't get there because we just analyze this for what it is, and at Ohio State, it's a place where good teams go to die.
Yeah, and one of the fun things about covering sports is when you go through a season like 2002 or 2009 or those seasons, you don't know it's coming.
Yeah.
Right. You don't know that Iowa in 2002 is going to go to the Big House and just freaking annihilate Michigan.
Yeah.
After the Indiana game where they, it wasn't an easy game in Bloomington, but those are the type of things, and that's what makes this sport fun. Yeah. You get a win on Saturday, and then it changes the complexion of this season completely, and people are like, wow, we have something here.
Yeah. I mean, imagine what the area is going to be like if they pull that out.
Yeah.
I mean, this place Saturday night in Iowa City will be rocket. And it should be. And everybody, you know how it is after a big win in Iowa City. If people feel good about themselves, that that they, the fans are, the people are nicer. They're more excited about life and everything like that. And I'm not predicting that, but what I'm saying is that it's just this team has a good vibe about it. 2 years ago, it did not. Offensively, it was a disaster. We had the Illinois debacle, all the stuff with Brian. This time they feel like they're pretty confident. And again, you can't predict a win at Ohio State, but I could predict a pretty good season, and I see that coming for this team.
No doubt. I think Scott and I are kind of on the same page here. Puncher's chance for Iowa, maybe even more than that on Saturday, but you got to go out and do it. You got to go out and show that you can play on this level. Iowa has not played well against the top teams in recent years. It's been bad. So that's the first step, is be competitive on Saturday. Put yourself in position to win in the fourth quarter. Make some plays, pull it out. Your season, you become the story.
Yes.
The TV highlight shows you are the story. Iowa beat Ohio State is the number one story in college football if it happens this week. Let's hope it does. We'll see, and we'll be back to talk about it next week. As Scott alluded to earlier, he has another trip next week to Nashville, so we won't be on Thursday, but we'll figure out a different time to do it. Maybe Friday morning again. We'll see what happens, but we'll let you know. Check out our Twitter X feeds, and we'll give you an update. But anything else, Scott?
No, I think all's good, man. I look forward to your recap show after this game, and I think this will be fun. I'm excited for it.
You got O'Hare today?
I'm going through Minneapolis and over.
Oh, good for you.
I was in O'Hare yesterday and the day before.
Yeah.
And I might be on Sunday. I think I might go through there on Sunday. So,
well, safe travels, my man. And we will talk to you next week, as we will with everybody else. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Really appreciate all of our sponsors. Please check them out. We would appreciate that. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game. Be nice to each other. And we will talk to you next week. Say goodbye, Scott.
Goodbye, Scott.